We are here, Dayton, Ohio,
Yes, sir.
Table 33 restaurant. Man, listen, hold on. First off, we are definitely socially distant. So we're going to take these off so you can hear what we're saying. Well, let me say welcome to Advocating with the Best in the Biz. I'm your host, Solomon Uyemi, a.k.a. Solly, and today we have a legend. This man is the crafter of a sound and a vibe. He is the former drummer and frontman of Dayton, Ohio's own Slave. He helped develop Dayton as the funk capital of the world. Let me say that twice. Funk capital of the world. All right? He moved on to a solo career of greatness. You know, the Hall of Fame when it hit the dance floors was a juggernaut when it hit the charts, and this man spread his message of positivity and introspection on dance floors worldwide. I call him the mayor of the funk. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about the one and only Mr. Steve Arrington.
Solly. Good to be with you today, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for talking with me today, sir. This is an honor. Truly an honor. I want to start by asking, you know, I'm from Dayton, Ohio. You're from Dayton, Ohio originally. How did you get started in, you know, what was your interest in music as a kid? Because I know, as I said, you were a drummer. Did you start in percussion or drumming, or you know? Can you give us a small background of like that time?
Pots and pans, like social studies books for the kick drum, smaller science books for the snare.
Okay.
I started pots and pans and books. It's just something I felt. I used to say when I was little I had a drum in my nose, right? So they do big boxing and everything.
Right.
Back then, before I knew about any of that or if that was even popping, in my understanding, I had a drum in my nose. So I used to just do these beats, right? As a little homie. And it got started listening to, you know, Motown and listening to that kind of music. And I just always felt the drums, always felt music.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, man, you know, everyone, you know, you spoke to a few of the different people. As a kid, you know, you joined a group called the Young Mystics.
Yeah.
Dayton, Ohio, man. Listen, Dayton, Ohio is like we said, it's the funk capital, and there's a reason why it's the funk capital. You know what I mean? There was just so many people here that were just in the during that. I think that time was possibly the mid '70s to the late '80s. Around that time, it was so much going on. We had at least 13 groups signed at the same time to international, you know, to big labels. You know what I mean? From little old Dayton, Ohio. You know what I mean?
Right.
Can you tell us about the Young Mystics? How it was, you know, joining that? Because, like you said, it went from pots and pans, so it went from pots and pans to moving on to actually groups.
Well, you know, the pots and pans, I'm like 6, 7, 8 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm in school, I'm in, you know, jazz band and things like that. In high school, the great Mark Adams, the bass player for Slave, rest in peace, Adams. And the great Danny Webster, who just passed away just weeks ago.
Wow.
Him and Daddy and myself and the great Mark Hicks, who also passed away not that long ago. We were all in sixth period together, and that would be like the music period, right? The last period of high school. That being said, we used to jam in the back room, so we do what we had to do in terms of the curriculum, and then Mr. Molin would allow us to like bring instruments, and we could jam in this room, and even sometimes jam in front of the whole class. You know what I'm saying?
And that's great just to know that the school system was like really behind you, because now we have the whole situation with people online doing school, and it's really not, it's not the same type of feeling, you know, being actually physically there with them and to really learn and just to, like you said, have that time on the side to really, like, you know, work your chops and figure out what you really, you know, what you really was getting into, and, you know, make it happen. Yeah.
So that's Mark Adams and I. We met there. Mystics, and that was Floyd Miller, who was also enslaved trombonist,
All right.
vocalist, and percussionist, and also Tom Lockett played horn. He was also in that sixth period. They were in this group, the Young Mystics. I played drums. They said, "Yo, man, won't you come and check us out? Play drums with us." I'm like, "Let's do it." So I went to the rehearsal. I can remember telling my brother, we had this conversation, my brother Victor Shaw. I was like, "Man, this bass player, this kid, man, Mark Adams, this dude is crazy. He's probably in the ninth grade," because I was a senior at the time. This dude is bad, man. So we started playing together, and then I graduated. And they were still in school, and then I went out to the West Coast to start, see if I could make it to the Bay Area. And that's kind of how it all went for me. I went from pots and pans playing with my brother's group. And by the way, with my brother's group now, different musicians who were in the scene, like the original bass player with Lakeside in my brother's band, the original drummer from Slave in my brother's band, Tim Dozier, right?
So they were a little older.
Yeah, they were a little older, and I used to watch them, right? And so, even Junie Morrison came through, was playing with my brother's band for a while. And this is like when I'm like 8, 9, 10, you know what I'm saying, 11 years old.
Formative years, like
Absolutely. And that led me then into being able to play with the Young Mystics, where people were more my age, and I was actually a little bit the older guy in that situation. But yeah, man, from pots and pans and through my brother's band, playing a little congas and stuff like that. Moving into high school, getting my chops up on the drums, bam, Young Mystics.
Okay, and now you said you had moved to the Bay. I find that very interesting. Like myself as a young guy, and I had a group in Dayton, Ohio. We literally, after I graduated from college, we all moved to the Bay Area because independent music was the thing. It was one of the top 3 markets in music in the world. You know what I mean? At that time, if you wasn't in LA or if you wasn't in New York, you had to go through the Bay, definitely. You know, any kind of music genre. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there it is. Right.
The Fillmore, any kind of music genre, you had to go through there.
Yeah.
So was that a good reason as to why you went to the Bay? Because while you were out there, you had some different experiences. You know, Escovedo, Santana, if I'm not mistaken. You were working with people outside of the funk realm, I would think. You know what I mean? Can you expand on that a bit?
Well, Lakeside left Dayton. Lakeside, they're about 4 to 5 years older than me.
I mean, it's interesting that you're saying this when you say that they were just this older than you, because it's like, I don't think people realize, like, the youth, like people were like 15, 16 years old, like playing music, like jamming, but really being serious about, what they want to do in life. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
So I'm just, man, I'm blown away. Please,
But yeah, Lakeside decided to go to L.A. Now we come behind Lakeside. Lakeside comes behind the Ohio Players. We looked up to both of them, but Lakeside was closer to our age group. So Lakeside decided they're going to go to L.A. to try and make it. We were like, if Lakeside's going to L.A., then we need to go to the West Coast as well.
That's right.
But what I did, instead of going to L.A., I went to the Bay Area. I was still part of that hippie culture at that time.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's big out there.
And I wanted to get some of that in the whole Berkeley, San Francisco, Oakland thing, right?
Hate Street.
Absolutely.
That whole Amoeba Records, the whole Rasputin's, the whole I totally get it. Now Telegraph, yes. I totally get it. Yeah.
And because, like you were saying earlier, there was so much diversity in the music. So I was just as at home listening to Tower of Power as I was listening to Jefferson Airplane or Grateful Dead, or the great Santana. You know, so and all of those guys were from the Bay Area.
Right.
And so Lakeside, they got busy. It blew up in L.A. I got to play with the mighty Escovedo, starting with Coke Escovedo.
Mm.
And I call him my pops in the game because Coke Escovedo he really believed in me and really took a lot of time with me to get me to understand. Because at that time, Latino music, it was pretty much Santana, which was more of a rock thing.
Right. On a bigger scale.
Right.
Like outside of South America and Latin America.
Exactly.
Yeah, because a good friend of mine, Andres Hernandez, who's DJ Dez, he was the DJ for Slum Village. His father is Humberto Hernandez, the conga and I think lead vocalist for Eric Carey, which is one of the big Afro-Cuban, So just that idea in the Bay, I know is very prevalent and very big. Just the idea of the Latin sound, the Afro-Cuban sound. So just I was really amazed to know that you really got to work with a lot of the ones that at that time were like really pushing it and forefathers of that.
Yes, and what was important for me, because being from the Midwest, the Latino musics, the salsa, that sort of thing hadn't really hit strong in the Dayton area, in the Midwest. So my understanding of Latin music was perhaps Mongo Santa Maria, Watermelon Man. My mom used to rock that, or Chili Con Carne, Ray Barretto, Kenny Burrell, I should say, Kenny Burrell. But getting into Eddie Palmieri or Charlie Palmieri or Willie Bobo, any of that kind of music, which was hardcore salsa. I hadn't heard that music till I went out to the West Coast. And now I may have heard like Fania All Stars, just in passing musically. But it wasn't until I went to the West Coast that I understood, yo man, there's a whole thing, Azteca, Malo, there was a whole thing going on. And Coke Escovedo was helping me to learn. He would always say, it's deeper than the notes. You can learn the notes, but you have to learn the language, the feeling of the music, the emotion, the feel of the music.
That's right.
And that's what he taught me. And the Escovedo family, Sheila
E. For those that don't know, please explain who they are, because there's a lot of younger viewers that are going to see this and not know exactly who you're talking about. But you know what I mean? Just in that aspect, that's amazing.
The great Sheila Escovedo, Sheila E. Played Latin percussion, and what was so incredible is I'd never seen a female percussionist before. We were playing in San Francisco, and I was playing drums with her uncle, Coke. Coke was bad. He was on that Abraxas album, Santana. Went on to do his own records, Coming At You, for instance, Coke Escovedo. So he goes, we're in San Francisco. He said, I want you to meet my niece. Which maybe she was going to sing or something.
Right.
Anyway, she sets up the congas next to me. I'm like, we're still not really understanding what's about to go down. She starts slapping, right? I couldn't believe it. And we became cool. I used to hang out with the family, play basketball, go to dinner. I started playing with Pete and Sheila Escovedo, and they had a 17-piece salsa band. Wow. That was with Julian Priester on trombone, Eddie Henderson on the trumpet. There was Bill Summers, also from Summers Heat, played percussion as well. And it was a band full of just crazy talented people. And I'm from Dayton, Ohio. I'm holding on, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm learning this music, but they really, man, was like, we see something in you. Come on, you can do this, you can do it.
I truly feel that, like, because I felt that way when I moved to the West. When I moved to the Bay, it's like they took us in. They were like, yo, if you're dope, like, first they looked at us like, okay, so who are y'all? And then it came to, oh, y'all dope. And then it came to, oh, okay, we started throwing shows there. You know what I'm saying? Then it came to, oh, you part of the Bay, man. Like, you Bay Area. You know what I mean? And they literally take you in the right way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I had wondered was that the same way back then? But I think that they really like Midwestern people because we have a different kind of sensibility, how we are, just how we talk to them, and just all of that. We got manners.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And they liked our feel.
Hmm.
That's what they kept telling. Because remember, I didn't say this, but here's the kicker: Billy Cobb, my
Billy
favorite
Cobb.
drummer, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's playing drums with Pete and Sheila Escovedo,
Mm.
and then he left and did the thing with George Duke,
Mm.
and so they had drummers filling in, and they asked me to play it. I went to the rehearsal. I had seen them with Billy. Billy's my idol.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, there's no way I can do what he does.
Right.
Now I'm 21 years old, and they said we like your feel.
How long did it take for you to hear for them to say that for you to recognize exactly what they meant though? How long did it take? Because you might hear it and be like, hell yeah, okay.
Well, because of what Coke, I had played with Coke, right, and we would open for them a lot of times, right, and Coke liked my feel. He liked that Midwest stomp, that Midwest ooh-wee, right? They dug, and then I didn't have to play all the notes that Billy played because there was 3 percussionists anyway. I just had to find where my slot was,
that pocket,
and then go ahead and bring the ooh-wee to it, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, I see the Bay Area was definitely a good influence as well as an accompaniment to your style. That it was definitely together. So Slave was the group that you joined. Now, did you join them in the Bay Area, or you came back to Dayton at that time, or were they in LA? Because I got to remember, once again, it was so many different people collectively chilling. So I can see now you being in the Bay, sliding down to LA to possibly do, you know what I mean, like to link in because it's not that far. You know what I mean? It's like going to Toledo or going to Detroit or something like that from here. So. Yeah, please. And also, what gave you more satisfaction with Slave, the drumming or the singing?
Well, I finished my tenure with the Escovedos, and Sheila went with George Duke, and that's when most people found out about her. She was the female percussionist with George Duke, who was this girl. She then goes on to move in with Prince, and she moves in that direction, and then she's no longer Sheila Escovedo. She's Sheila E.
Right.
So at the time, the unit decided, because Carlos Santana was the featured guitarist, he left his own band and he just wanted to play some hard salsa for a while. So I mean, this was incredible for me because again, I'm like just turning 21 and I'm playing with all these heads, right? I mean, they killing it. And then Mark Adams, the bass player for Slave, calls me up. Now this is right after I heard Slide on the radio, right? 77. I'm like, man, I'm digging that. I got to go snatch that up. I flip it over, and half of the cats that was in the group that I had left when I came out to California, which was the Young Mystics, fused up with Stevie Washington from New Jersey, who was the nephew of Pee Wee, the trumpet player for the Ohio Players. They team up, turn in the group, calling them Slave. They do Slide. I'm finishing my tenure. Now they have moved off into the next album, Hardness of the World. They say, hey, you want to join the band and go out on tour with us? And I was just finishing my tenure with the Escovedos. This is 78.
78, folks. Pay attention.
And I go back to Dayton, get myself together, and then I fly to Jersey because Slave was like a combination of Dayton and New Jersey because Stevie Washington.
I did not know that.
Yes, the leader of the group, Stevie Washington, was from New Jersey, although he moved to Dayton to live with Pee Wee because he was also a roadie for the Ohio Players. So he moved to Dayton. Him and Drac got together, Mark Drac Hicks, and then they formed Slave. But then we would go back and forth, right, between Dayton and New Jersey because Stevie was the leader of the group, and we would go back to New Jersey. Sometimes we lived in New Jersey, sometimes we lived in Dayton. But that's how it started, and that was in '78. And my first real recording with them was at the end of '78 on the concept album, where I played drums on stellar funk and percussion. Now, I started as the drummer, and that was my main thing.
Right, and just coming from the life of who you were, that was it. Like you were, I think you were focused on that too.
And I was
completely
cool with that too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had no aspirations of anything more than that. But then, hey man, can you sing? Well, I do a little something, hey, because I had in between going out to California, and I did this little lounge gig for a while with a group called the Murphys.
Okay.
Tie your ribbon round your
old
tree. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm singing all kind of stuff that's like you go in Vegas Arena or something like that.
Yeah.
But it taught me how to play and sing at the same time. I still didn't really take it that serious.
Okay.
But when I joined Slave, it was like, can you sing? I'm like, yeah, I can do a little something.
Mm-hmm.
But I was there to play drums.
Gotcha.
The next album, Just a Touch of Love, which is 1979, we do the track, Just a Touch of Love, and say, hey, get different people over to Mike. Steve, what you coming with? I'm like, okay. I'm doing my little thing, right? And they go, we don't know what that is, but go ahead and get some lyrics
Right.
and come back tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And got my lyrics together. The next thing I know, I'm singing lead on Just a Touch of Love. Man, I'm going, how did that happen? And then most of the guys from Dayton was like, who's this dude singing with Slave? That's Steve Eric. Steve the drummer? Yeah. I'm like, when did that happen? It just, like I said, I never saw that coming.
Mm-hmm.
But for a while, it was hard for me to see myself as a singer because I ended up being the primary lead vocalist of Slave.
Right.
But my love for drums, and I still play drums on the albums.
Mm-hmm. No, I know this, but that's why I wonder. Like, but really, I'm not saying that because your vocal presence is you, and is it's a true presence. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like you said, the feel. It's your soul, and I think that's what it was. They just was like, man, you singing his soul out right now, man. You singing this in a positive way, like really, like you hear the introspection in it. You know what I mean? And then your approach was different too. Like the approach for how you were writing stuff, it was very visual, and it was very like. What's the word I want to use? I want to say, like, you could have said, you got what I need. Or you could say, I see you from the corner of my eye. It's just a different approach. You know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, man, just amazing. I may have lost myself for a moment, but I actually wanted to just play just a quick excerpt of Just a Touch. This is him definitely doing something special. I thought you were going to say this was a freestyle. Like, wait a minute, no, this is not a freestyle. I sing with you or something. Come on.
Make it shine just a little bit, with just a touch of love. Send my light just a little bit, You got to keep me high, baby, just a little bit, with just a touch of love. And we spend some time
Listen, all I know is when that came out, people definitely knew what your name was outside of drumming. You know what I'm saying? Outside of drumming, yes, they definitely did. So that was '79. I had spoke or not spoke, but did some research and was peeping how Dane Funk, the artist from California, you know, he's like the regeneration of like the funk sound. You know what I mean? And he has said that the Slave Showtime album that came out. He said that that he was very influenced by a lot of that era, and specifically that album. He called you an unsung great. This makes me think of your influence on West Coast G-funk sound and pop lock culture in the late '70s and '80s. Can you speak on your influence on that culture and how like songs like Snapshot, Wait for Me, Steal Your Heart, they're like staples in that culture, you know what I mean? Can you speak to that?
Well, I think it's exciting when younger people discover your music and that your music has legs into generations, right?
Mm-hmm.
You make your music and you give your all. You don't know how if first of all, you don't know how it translates in your particular time.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say, boom, okay, it hits, people are feeling you. Then there's another side of this thing. How does the music age?
Mm-hmm.
Does it age well?
Mm-hmm.
Do younger people think it's corny?
Mm-hmm.
Or do younger people like, I'm messing with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm rocking with that. My man was jumping off with that, and you know what? I'm still jumping off with it. Samples come down the pipe, right? So people are sampling the music. Weak in the knees, slide, the touch, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can be you with you, and I'm sort of going forward a little bit into more of my solo things. But the concept of what I'm talking about is as I watched all these things happening, I was excited about it because I look at myself as a person that constantly is continuing my search and wanting to grow and wanting to see what's going on and give my take on the culture of now.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw the different people and even rocking with Dane Funk, we did an album together, Higher.
Yeah, we're going to speak a little bit about that. Yeah.
So my whole thing was I was excited about the people who were excited about the music that come before them. And the whole West Coast thing really jumped on it, like you were saying on the G-Funk tip. So it was great to see that we had that first hit with the music, and then that next stage of how well does the music age, and our music aged well.
Quite well. To this day, like I said, coming to get my cameraman Alvin, who is the cousin of Mark Hicks. So we're just gonna show you how Dayton, Ohio is, and how it really shows like people are still here and relatives, family. It's a true family, small spot. You know what I mean? So
It's a peak to great Mark Hicks.
But just Dane Funk, really Snoop Dogg, Pharrell, like it's a myriad of artists that have utilized sampled your music, and like I said, or like I've came to an understanding, like it's a rebuilding and it's a reawakening of people to stuff they may not have knew about, or you know what I'm saying, like they just maybe didn't know about. You know what I mean? They didn't know that's what it was. They didn't know that's what it was. With that Dane Funk collaboration, Higher, came out in 2013 on Stone Throw Records. How did that relationship form? Like how did and what was the process somewhat in creating that particular album? You can just touch small on that.
Well, I had put out on my website at the time a joint called The Invade Has Arrived, and it was just a loop. He and Peanut Butter Wolf, the head of Stone's Throw, heard the loop, and they were like, yo, man, is Arrington coming back? What's going on? Because I had stepped off the scene for 25 years.
We're definitely going to touch a little bit of that.
So they heard the loop and hit me up on at that time. Hit me up on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Yo, man, my name's Dane Funk. I'm doing this funk thing, man. I've been influenced by the music. I want to keep funk going and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Man, can you holler at a brother? And I said, let me hear the music, man. So I go to Stone's Throw's site and, I'm listening to the joints. I'm like, yo, I like this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it started with a 12-inch.
Okay.
I said, yo, man, would you jump on this track? So he sent me some tracks.
Mm-hmm.
I sang on them in my studio, home studio, sent them back. So it started off with the 12 and like, man, we really feel it. This first song was magnificent. Yo, man, that's working. Let's do like a EP, 3-joint EP. Like, let's get it. Send some stuff back. Yo, man, this is working. Can we turn it to a 6 song? Turn it to 9 and say, hey, man, how about you joining the family, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Which was exciting for me because I had been studying underground music
Mm-hmm.
prior to them
Even reaching out. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that first person that I was into was the great Roz G. Rest in peace.
Yes. L.A. Stand up. Bro.
Yes. And I was way off in the Roz G.
Mm-hmm.
And so through Roz G, I started getting into other artists, Hudson Mohawk,
Mm-hmm.
and then I started listening to Flying Lotus.
Mm-hmm.
And his mom, his aunt, Alice Coltrane.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like intriguing for me because I'm like a super Coltrane head, right? I love John Coltrane.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also loved Lotus's music. It was very unique, but it was very much focused on like a more panoramic view.
It was a texture. He painted textures with the sound of what he. Oh, for sure.
I'm like, I'm all over this right
That's
here.
right.
So the great Roz G and those things were happening, and I was enjoying that music, and that's when Stone's Throw hit me up. That was around 2010, something like that. And then the album ended up coming out in 13. And of course, then I get hit to Mad Lib, and you know what I mean. Now I'm really in the mix now because I'm asking, yo, man, who should I listen to? I had did my own research. But now I'm right here in the mix with the whole deal.
Yep.
One of the great underground labels in the world.
Yep.
Stone's Throw.
Yeah.
So that's where I got hit to Jay Dilla, his underground side, with donuts and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of how the whole thing came up with Dane Funk and Stone's Throw.
Nice. And not to bounce backwards or anything like that, but I did want to touch on another thing too. We're from Dayton, Ohio, both of us. WDAO Radio. WDAO Radio is a radio station in Dayton, Ohio, and it was leading the Ohio region showcasing Black American music.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and more notably, people from the Dayton region. I remember listening as a kid and really getting a taste of so many different musical vibes and styles. Man, can you speak on WDAO and the radio in Dayton? Because it was totally different from the other radio stations that were actually playing in Dayton, And I mean, please speak on that because they are still running right now. WDAO is still around on AM and FM radio, but they're a big part of the legacy of this funk capital.
Absolutely. First, I want to shout out to the great Turk Logan.
Turk Logan.
I'm gonna holler at him right off the rip.
Mm-hmm.
Turk went in. Well, his presence was so powerful in the Dayton music scene from the radio perspective. What was so interesting is there was a time when Ohio players had hot stuff out. Zap, Roger, Slave, Sun,
Lakeside,
Dayton
Sidewinders.
Yep, we were all out at the same time hitting the charts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a time, Fazo, all of us were hitting the charts at the same time and going on tour together at the same time. And Dale supported our music so much, we turned on the radio and we'd hear one of us all day long.
All day long. Right. Every hour on the hour.
Here's somebody else.
That's right.
Yeah. Here's that joint, Here's that riding high phase hole, you know. Here's the joint, and then a lot of people don't remember about the group Dayton itself. We had that going as well. They did a great remake of Hot Fun in the Summertime, and they had this joint music. Oh man, Sound of Music. Oh man, come on. So Dayton, it was incredible because we'd go to each other's rehearsals. I remember, man, one day we was at Ohio Players rehearsal, bro. I'll never forget this long as I live. And Sugarfoot with the full blown swoop, the double neck, right? He's sitting down. He says, "You know what?" I said, "What, Foots? Man, they ought to get me to play Hendrix in the Hendrix movie, man. They should get me to play Hendrix." And I thought,
You're right.
I can see that.
You're right.
I'll never forget that long as I live, man. But that's what we used to do. They would allow us to come into their rehearsals. We were in each other's rehearsals. It wasn't competitive like that, like you stay away. You know, we gave our all on the stage, and we went there. But we realized that something bigger than ourselves in a whole was going on there. Yeah.
And you know, like just even you saying that, all of these individual groups had their own sound. Didn't nobody sound like each other? If anything, maybe they gave a tip to somebody by like, you know, saying maybe something from their song, and it's almost like just giving a pat on the back. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, that's one thing that people don't realize, that none of these people sound the same. Like, and they all were doing it, and it almost takes you back to your high school, because once again, these are all the people that you all kind of grew up playing along with all along. So it's just a continuation, and there's got to be a good feeling inside to have everybody there as a family like that. You know what I mean? And it might be a headache sometimes, but at the same time, it's going to be love. Period.
Yeah, at the talent shows and Battle of the Bands, we all saw each other, and when we would get out on the road, we would talk about that. Can you believe this, bro? We'd be in the limo, right?
Right.
Can you believe what's going on right now, bro? It was just the other day we was at Lakeview Palladium when we was at Roth High School. But yeah, man, it was a legitimate movement. It was the real deal. And here it is, all these years later, we're still talking about it.
That's right.
Because it wasn't a producer-driven thing.
Yep.
It wasn't this one artist just had such an influence till everybody sounds like that. It was like all these different bands. Nobody sounded like the other.
Yep.
And we got, you know, the Wilder Brothers up in there, man. You know, Heat Wave up in there, which is a combination of Dayton and Europe, you know, with Rod Temperton. So, and I gotta tell it like it is. Vesta Williams comes from Dayton too. Vesta got busy. She was all in the bands too. She was in a band called Flash.
Was Shirley Murdoch around?
Shirley Murdoch was with Zach. Yeah, coming out of Toledo. Moved to Dayton. Yeah, man, it was crazy. All of this was happening at the same time, and we all loved each other. I mean, I used to go hang out at Rogers and those guys' studio. We'd go for rides. I love to go for rides, man. And just go ride in the country, whatever, man. And we were all close like that. And those relationships are still strong to this day.
That's right. Well, man, that even leads me to my next question is, you know, health is truly wealth in this life of artistry. And, you know, can you speak on health and staying on a great wellness plan? You know, because when we look at some of the contemporary artists of the generation, you know, how did you stay away from the negative influences? You know what I mean? Like just the partying constantly. I mean, you probably did partake of some of the stuff because it was what it was. But I'm saying, how did you stay away from, like, because even when I look at Ohio Players, like a lot of the things that took them out was more like health issues from the partying and having fun from years before. So I'm just wondering, how did you, because you took the time away too. So I'm wondering.
Yes. Yeah, you know, it was my love for God. It was wanting to make a connection with the Creator. You know, wanting that to be the centerpiece of my life. I can't claim any know-how outside of that because I've made my mistakes through the years, and but at the end of the day, I wanted that connection to stay strong with the Creator. So sometimes you start going off to the left, off to the right, and you're like, "Hey, let's get back in here, bro."
But you recognize it, and that's the blessing is to recognize when it's kind of like, maybe not. You know what I mean?
And you know, and I'm still adjusting to this day because my desire is to be out here like the great Buddy Guy, who's still doing it at the highest level.
Right. That's right.
In his 80s. You know, B.B. King didn't pass away until he played at his zenith continuously all the way until he left this world.
That's right.
So you know, my desire is to do this at the highest level for as long as I possibly can. Because I love this. This is what I'm put here to do. I recognize that this is my gift to the world. In the way that others has blessed me so much in their music, their gift has touched and blessed me. I just want to be that for someone else.
Yeah, your mentorship. That mentorship is such a value in this climate nowadays in 2020. It's just that aspect of it, the mentorship of it. Because I know the conversations that you have with like cats like Snoop and all those kind of guys, they take that stuff to heart, man, and really be paying attention. You know what I mean?
And I love what they do as well. You know, it's room enough for all of us. And I understand, you know, the younger guys. I'm not one of those guys, and I say this with much respect for someone who has a different view. But for me, I call myself a music adventurist. So, like, I love so many styles, diverse music. Like right now, I'm on this K-pop thing, Blackpink. I'm messing with Blackpink heavy right now.
I got to get more into the K-pop. So I have daughters, so you know, my oldest is into the K-pop. Believe it or not, yes.
But you know, at the same time, I'm looking back, getting my muddy together, man. I'm saying, yo, man, I gotta hear some Hound Dog Taylor today. I'm all over the place, but I don't. One size doesn't fit all. Just because that's my thing doesn't mean because someone else sees it different, they're wrong or I'm right or any of that.
That's right.
It's just what works for you. So I don't, you know, other people who say, you know, hey man, music today is blase, exclude me, man. I'm like, well, okay, that's how you feel about it. Cool. My perspective is different.
A little different. A lot different.
I mess with, you know, like I said, I holler at Murder Moot, Battle Rap, you know, Loaded Lux, you know what I'm saying? Cats like that. But, like I said, one size doesn't fit all. Everybody's correct in what works for them.
That's right. So we were speaking about, we took some time away from music. Now, can you speak on that, or what was the big change where you were just like, you know what, I think I'm going to take some time to do other things. You know what I mean?
When I was a little guy in church, my great uncle was the pastor, Charles Cook, at Bethsaida Baptist Church.
Bethsaida, okay.
In Crown Point, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, Crown Point area.
McKinley Methodist. So
Yeah, right. You already know.
Yes, sir. I definitely did.
And I'm 3 years old, and my pastor is calling me music. He didn't say music, he said music. So there was preachers all in my family, really influenced by my great uncle Charles. So I grew up in the church, right? And it's always been a part of my life. I've always felt that connection to God. No matter what stage of life I was in, even in the hippie vibe, it still had a God connection for me. That being said, it started to, instead of just being this particular part and then most of my Other thought processes were more, I need to get this, I need to get that, I need to be about this over here.
Material. It was
Yes.
more of the materialistic side.
Exactly.
as opposed to-
And there's a place for that.
Mhm.
But my spirituality started to take more of a front and center, that those things now had to revolve around this planet.
Mhm.
And so I had gotten to a point where I said, you know what, in order for me to really get deeper into my spirituality and my connection with God, I have to step away from these things
Mhm.
because they had been such a place of my identity, was so wrapped up in this thing over here, the music and where all that took me.
Mhm.
I stepped away from it so that it was not going to rival this relationship that I was getting deeper and more
Mhm.
connected to.
Mhm.
And so I left the scene just out of the blue. I left the scene.
Now, were you still in Dayton at that time, or did you just kind of like literally leave the scene where you just had to get yourself to a different space?
Well, I was in Dayton at the time.
Okay.
Then I moved to Atlanta. I moved to Miami.
Okay. Okay.
But my spirituality, in terms of, then I started to get into the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole thing was exciting for me because music for me, and still is to this day, is a heart thing.
Mm-hmm.
I follow my heart.
Mm-hmm.
So one would say, how could you have done that? You just da-da-da. I said, no. It was following my heart that made me be able to do just a touch of love.
Mm-hmm.
It was following my heart, well, man, that made me able to do Dancing in the Key of Life, which has nothing to do with Way Out, which has nothing to do with watching you.
Total different textures, period. Like,
Yes.
It was attributes of your feeling, almost.
Exactly.
If you want to say it.
And so I just made another move where I just followed my heart.
That's
And then
right.
after 25 years, I went, it's time to get back into the mix that I was in.
All right.
And people was like, dude, you're too old, it's too long,
Mhm.
let's do this. I says, no, it's not. Well, why not? Because that's not why I got into it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I love to do. I was doing in the church the whole time I was in the church.
Mm-hmm.
But now it was time to get into a place where I had a more ability to take a more panoramic view of the music.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I
Disseminating
did.
that knowledge out, like on a worldly level, as opposed to just the local. You know what I'm saying? Like
Exactly.
on a worldly level, you already were on that worldly level, but this was just a whole nother. It's another attribute of you, like you said.
Yes. And so I went right back into getting into the more worldly level of the whole thing, and people was feeling it.
Mhm.
Stones Throw was like, yeah, let's get down. I'm doing these cool collabs,
Mhm.
and I'm learning all kind of other stuff too, man. I'm getting into the Moors. I mean,
Mhm.
my mind, I'm opening up for new and exciting, more information, historic,
Mhm. Mhm.
information.
Cultural exchange, if you
Yeah,
will, like just
absolutely.
literally,
So, I'm just, even to this day, I'm so excited just about learning,
Mhm.
and developing and having fun doing that.
That's right, man. Well, I tell you what, we are in 2020 right now, and you just put out Down to the Lowest Terms, the Soul Sessions on Stone's Throw, with a slew of current production, and classic funk styles. Some of the standout songs for myself are "The Joys of Love," and listen, when the dance floor is really open back up in the United States and around the world, I beg you to put out "You're Not Ready" and put a visual to that, please, because that is a banger. And I know what the effect is, and like you said, that's totally different than "The Joy of Love," which is totally different than Actually, let's check out a little bit of "The Joy of Love" real quick, so we can let these people know what's going on with the newness. With the newness, make a difference, like. Available right now, y'all. Yep.
Christ rejoice in love into your life. It's true. I do. I thank God every day. I thank God every day. I thank God every day. I'm not here to play with your mind. I'm not here to play tricks on you. Just want to show you a deeper place ascensions. It's not nice, it's not cute, but it's real and it's raw, absolute. And it's not slick, not fake. And I appreciate the Lord every step of the way. All I wanna do is adore you, baby. I'm not here to confuse you, but I'm here to good news you. I'm here to good news. I'm here to good news. Ooh-wee. Yeah, 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 yeah. I speak for joy, some love, for joy into your life. It's true. I do. I thank God every day. Thank God every day. Thank God every day. Thank God every day. I thank God every day.
Listen, man. I mean, in 2020, that's what we need. We need that music, man. We need that type of vibe. We need that type of introspection. It's a different look on life. You know what I mean? Like that with the current different sound and production added to it. It's just like, man, listen. And that song right there, I really like. I really enjoy that song. Just say it like that. I truly enjoy that song. You know what brought that? I mean, we know the lovely wife brought that about.
Yes,
You know what
sir.
I'm saying? Yes, we would have known.
No lie.
That's right.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I go with my heart, like I said, you know, and I'm working with the younger producers on this. Shout out to the great Mind Design.
Mind Design.
Yeah, and Devin Morrison as well.
Mhm.
On this track.
Mhm.
And the whole thing I wanted to do is I wanted this album to push me in different territory that perhaps you hadn't heard me do before,
Mhm.
which is always what I did in the past.
Right.
You know, Way Out sounded nothing like Just a Touch of Love.
Right.
So you know, me being my love for, let's say Miles Davis.
Mhm.
What I loved about Miles, and I'll even say the great Carlos Santana as well,
Mhm.
they weren't afraid to not only be different, but they might completely do music that had nothing to do with what they had done prior.
Right.
Like Bitches Brew
Yep.
has nothing to do
Kind of
with Kind of Blue.
Right. Totally different.
That being said, this album for me was for me to say, you know what, I'm into all these different things. There's a song on the album called My Favorite Swing.
Mhm.
And I'm excited about that because it would show my joy of the fusion era of the 70s,
Mhm.
where you would hear Weather Report and Mahavishnu Orchestra
Mhm.
and, you know, Herbert Hancock's Headhunters, who all came out of Miles off of that Bitches.
Exactly.
So there was a whole
Joe
new world.
Zawinul, like
Yes, sir.
was Wayne Shorter, I think,
Yes,
played with him
sir.
too. Like,
That's
yeah,
right.
man.
So the song, which is My Favorite Swing, is to say to those guys how much that music meant to me, and here's my take on it.
All right, well, let's take a little excerpt of that. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? We got to write Chuck. Got to write Chuck. Yeah. And this was a touch on drum and bass. This is the drum and bass that people forgot about. The one that everybody, you know, this the London.
You know I'm feeling good. You know you are my favorite swing. Yeah, take two, take two. Take two, two, shoot doodle day, shoot doodle day, shoot doodle doo. You know I'm feeling good.
I'm glad you touched on that because I had a question that definitely falls into you even bringing this part up. You know, you use a lot of beatbox and jazz phrasing in your music. Just it seems in the past and even now. You know, when I heard that particular song, it reminded me of Al Jarreau, Bobby McFerrin, even the great George Benson. You know, with the or Rochelle Farrell with the great vocal styling. So, like you said, with beating on the pots and pans, and you said you thought you had a drum in the nose. It literally lets me know. Is that how you start some of these songs, like with the grooves of like maybe the beatbox, percussion, or melodies to yourself, or how does that work? Because you definitely were a student of the jazz phrasing styles. Like I would think. I hope I'm not going out of my way to say that.
Well, the interesting thing about jazz for me is the fact that you can have Sun Ra, you can have Giant Steps Coltrane, you can have Meditations Coltrane, you can have Bitches Brew Miles, and then you can have Ella Fitzgerald just in a few years of each other. So for me, it was an absorption of hearing that music and not even thinking from a vocalist point of view at all. I was thinking more from just taking it in. But because I didn't think of it from a vocalist point of view, I might do phrasing that is very horn-like. Or I did a song on the Hall of Fame one album called Betty Bye.
Oh, I want to play that. That's one of my favorite songs because it was used to put to sleep. But the way that you came on Betty Bye, like I said, it was the approach of what you were saying, the words, how you worded the song, just, you know, saying like, you know, take time. You were speaking about, you know, let me turn off the lights, let me get rid of the phone, let me make it because Betty Bye is. It's the way that you talked about it. It wasn't exactly saying it, but it was just like touching around it, you know, visually giving people that vibe of it, man.
But if you take that melody, right? It's very monkish. Very monk. It is a monk influence.
Yeah, now that you say that, like just his playing around the scales. Wow. That's all right. Let me ask you this. Personally, we're not gonna hold you too long. You know, we got just a few more questions.
Hey, let's do it.
You know, we got a lot of young drummers and percussionists, you know, that are out. You know, Questlove from the Roots, Anderson .Paak, who you've worked with before. A good friend of mine is Daru Jones. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's the drummer for Jack White. You know, for Jack White. Who are the drummers that you're checking for nowadays? You know what I mean? Because it's still an undercurrent of people that are young but are still like pushing the motivations. Kareem Riggins, you know, even Madlib. You know what I mean? Like he took it upon himself to learn how to really, really fusion the MPC as well as his live instrumentation to really make it, do something different. So, like, who are you checking for in that round?
You mentioned Kareem Riggins. I dig what Kareem's doing a lot.
Okay.
Thomas Pridgen. I dig what Thomas Pridgen is doing. And Chris Coleman. I like Chris Coleman as well. And just the whole gospel phrasing that's happening now that you're hearing a lot of the gospel drummers, Eric Moore, Tony Royster, cats like that who are coming from that point of view. It's fusion. Well, hey man, and Ronald Broden, the great drummer, Thundercat's brother. So yeah, I dig a lot of what's going on. What I really like about a lot of the drumming today is the fact that it's so colorful and powerful and intense in a way that Billy was with Mahavishnu Orchestra. I'm hearing a lot of that kind of intensity in the thrust of the music. And that moves me because that original Mahavishnu Orchestra Intermounting Flame album, that changed my life. And to hear a lot of the new music approaching that thrust and that impact, I'm about that 100.
I mean, he has, like Thundercat in particular, I know we were all together for the Gym City Shine, the Dayton Strong thing that Dave Chappelle put together. And, he was here, and I think it was his brother that performed with him too, who was on the drums. But just the amount of crescendo climaxes that he had just in the bass, just going throughout the song. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was amazing, first and foremost, because I had never seen it live. So to see Thundercat live and see how they were coming with it, I mean, it was like looking at Herbie Hancock and Weather Report or Return, or like Chick Corea, Return to Forever. It was literally like wow, this is a young guy and he really got that. He got the chip.
He's the real deal.
He's the real deal, man. He's the real deal. But yeah, man, super. Yeah. So with Africa, have you ever been to Africa?
I've never been, and every time there's been a couple times, maybe even 3, I was supposed to go and something happened. But I know that time's coming. I really look forward to it. And I've been really studying a lot about Africa and the drumming and just the culture, the Dogon,
The Dogon culture,
yeah, and Cyrus B and that whole thing. You feel me? So yeah, I'm waiting for that. That's one of those things that has to happen.
Now, I selfishly asked that question because my dad is from Nigeria, and a relative of ours, my grandmother and his mother, Fela Anikolapo Kuti, Fela Kuti, that's a relative of mine. Shehu Kuti, also Femi Kuti, and that's through Nigeria. But I was wondering, I know when Fela was alive, he was the epicenter of the Afrobeat movement, but many of your contemporaries, the Beatles, James Brown, all of them, he wouldn't come outside. They had to go to him. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
so I'm just wondering, like you were saying that you were listening to different African, is there any influences that you can speak on that may have helped in the percussion side of what you were adding to?
I'd say from the absolute relentlessness of the polyrhythms, just the density of the poly, and the emotion, and the music speaking to we should maybe go here. The drums are saying we should make a move over here. So there's not a particular.
I got you.
It's an overall thing in which I'm seriously getting deeper off into as my studies take me off into, like I said, the Dodons and the Nomos. I did a joint with the great George Clinton, and we talked about the Dodons and the Nomos. And even I did a joint with Thundercat Black Claws, where we're asking questions into that particular is more about fame, the one of Black Claws, how to handle that when people see you different, you know, how you're able to deal with all of that. Well, for me, as I look at myself continuing to evolve and I take in, I gotta get my studies deeper off into the motherland. So to do the Dogons and then get into the study of that, and like I talked to you know, about the Moors, and getting into the deeper study of all of that. And when the Moors came over here and how much structural that we see
today
is from the Moors.
That's right.
So yeah, man, Africa has always been from the pots and pans. But as I've developed and continue to grow as a 64-year-old man, at this point I feel so electric because I know that I'm adding a whole new, and I don't mean new as in brand new from a start, but I mean new in a sense of more chambers,
new
more
perspectives,
chambers of understanding.
new attributes of understanding when it comes down to
Yes, that's a good word.
Well, I'll tell you, just a couple of people, just to name a few, that maybe even get you back into the mix. Of course, the great Hugh Masekela.
Yes.
Of course, King Sunny Ade, who is the father of the high life music, where it was predominantly guitar-driven, Nigerian, and of course the Fela Kuti. Yes, man. So we met each other at Dave Chappelle summer camp.
Yes, sir.
well, we reacquainted ourselves with each other at Dave Chappelle and got to actually know each other somewhat. So, man, you know, it's 2020. This was a big experience. Just can you tell me maybe some of your memories of it? And you performed at the Shack. I missed that night. I was on daddy duty that night, so I didn't get to come see you do your thing. But I saw it via the internet. Man, just please talk about a little bit how you felt about the experience of the summer camp.
It was probably one of the most profound things I'd ever seen, been part of, because it was such a camaraderie of giftings, and Dave's love. And the love for Dave was so strong that it filtered out into everything. And I just realized, I'm like, you know what? This is special on a whole bunch of different fronts.
Yes, I agree.
But I appreciate Dave. I appreciate his love because his love just filtered into everything.
I totally agree.
And to see the giftings all come together, and it wasn't ego, and it wasn't people, you know, trying to, this is my turf and territory, and this is my clique. It was none of that. And it was talent galore from one, because he didn't tell you who was coming.
Exactly.
And
all types of artists.
Boom. Yeah, man.
It's
From
artist
comedy. One day he had like the people from the Philharmonic in Cincinnati. The next day he's got the
David
great
Banner.
poet. You know what I mean? And then it's like it was just magical. Absolutely magical. But in the center of it, to see Dave just be who he was.
Yeah.
that was special, and the whole thing just it was like a swirling, wonderful thing.
Yep.
It didn't hit me as a this kind of thing.
Ah.
It was a swirling, magical, swirling thing. And I was honored to be a part of it, to watch it, to see that.
Yeah,
one
just
of the
to
highlights of anything I've ever done.
and you know, just so folks know, I mean, understand, a bubble was created. We had COVID tests. Everybody had their COVID test every time that they stepped on scene, and it was amazing. Kayak trips, canoe trips, barbecues, like things that you want to get back to having outside of that pandemic. So man, and those new community friendships that were built and those new like networks that were built are just seem like they're going to be amazing and going for a long time, you know. So you know, I want to say thank you because I was blessed to meet you at this particular spot, and I mean, you know, I really appreciate you taking out your time to come talk. You know, you have the album that's out right now, and I'm certain that's still being promoted because it just came out. What's next, and how can people get in contact with you?
Well, you know, I'm on several social media platforms. Hit me up, you know, on Twitter, Steve_Arrington, Instagram, Steve_Arrington, on Facebook, you know, Steve Arrington Music. And, you know, I like to interact with the people who come and hang out with me as well, so I do all my, you know, all my responses and so on and so forth. And, you know, I'm excited. You know, I've just, you know, reconnected with Stone's Throw, did the album Down to the Lowest Terms, the Soul Sessions. Looking at doing some more EP work. Actually, we're kind of looking at that now. And I'm excited about the collabs that have been happening, and we'll continue to do that. And expand, you know, what I'm trying to do. You know, met you at Dave Chappelle's summer camp.
That's right.
And, you know, and we're here today because of that.
That's right.
And so I'm excited about what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
And, you know, my future is, as I said, future so bright I had to wear shades, right? It's a great line. I didn't write it, but I wish I had.
Hey, man, listen, we gonna roll with it. You know what I mean?
But that being said, man, I'm in such a great energy in writing and production, and I'm just gonna keep putting out music and doing cool collabs. I did a collab with Thundercat. That was dope. We did Jimmy Kimmel Live, and there was Lotus and Thundercat and Steve Lacy and all those guys. You know, continuing to connect with those brothers, man, and Issa Ali.
I was gonna say we talked about the summer camp, but we didn't speak about Dayton's own Issa Ali. You know,
We
speak on that,
some
please.
things together.
That's right.
I did a track with David Byrne.
David Byrne. Oh.
And Nico.
Yes. I actually I got to hear a little preview of that. You know what I'm saying? I was quite happy. Y'all did that at Rephrase Studios.
Rephrase, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I just sent a couple tracks over to Issa. He's jumping on. We'll be sending those back and forth. And so, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I'm looking forward to getting back out on the road, you know, and start playing this new stuff live, you know.
That's right.
And but at the same time, you know, I'm enjoying my study. You know what I'm saying? In so many areas. So I'm taking this time to say, okay, I'm just going to take this time to get my study on. So the sky's the limit, man. I see, you know, at 64, and I've said that twice, but I'm excited about my age because I'm excited about my outlook.
That's right. Man, well, nobody could say it even better. Again, I call him the mayor of the capital funk. You know what I'm saying? Man, thank you. You know, thank you all for advocating with the best in the biz, Mr. Steve Arrington.
Number love.